Thanks for coming today. Want to talk about some common misconceptions about weight loss, and focus on, we're going to try to focus on where calories are going every day and why exercising is not enough to lose weight. This isn't about judgment, it's more about understanding the math and biology about how to take control of your health. We're only going to be covering weight loss, kind of conversations today. And I'm not covering the medical solutions to weight loss or I don't think I have any slides on that. So there are a couple of things that probably should have been in here that aren't just because of lack of time for putting the presentation together. But hopefully you'll find some useful tips. So first of all, overweight isn't just about appearances. There's a lot of health implications as well. If you are overweight, you have a risk of diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and even some cancers. It also puts pressure on your joints and can cause breathing problems like sleep apnea, which can also lead to chronic pain. So it's has an effect on both mental and emotional health and can increase the risk for depression and anxiety. And because fat tissue isn't just storage, it's actually hormonally active. It can also disrupt metabolism and affect hormone levels, which make weight loss even harder once you gain the weight. So it's not just about vanity, it's about long-term health and improving quality of life. Now, one thing that people don't realize is that a majority of the calories you burn every day is really going to it's not based on exercise, like intentional exercise. In fact, only about 10% of calorie burn is from intentional exercise for the average person. That assumes like a 2,000 calorie diet. If you're a 2,000 calorie diet and you have 10%, which is about 200 calories that come from exercise. That's about running 2 miles a day. And I'll go to the next slide and also talks about biking 8 miles a day or walking 4 miles a day. So, really like exercise is not the easy way to get to lose weight, although it helps. If you're biking as much as professional bikers or something like that, then you can or lose a lot of calories from exercise. But exercise is an important part of being healthy in general. So I'm not knocking it at all. You generally, I think the idea is that you want to get at least 20 minutes of aerobic exercise every day and a little bit of strength and weight training. That's what I've typically read, although I didn't research that for tonight. I was mostly focused on weight loss. So um, the truth about uh, weight loss is that well, I already covered this stuff. So let me go to the next slide. So the takeaway is you want to control what you eat, is just as important, if not more important, as how much exercise you do, because most of us don't have 3 or 4 hours a day to exercise. So given that we don't, even if we wanted to do that, which takes a lot of motivation, really being mindful of what you eat is the easiest thing that we can control. And it's both what you eat as well as how much calorie intake you get. So you want to be careful of calorie density. You want to try to avoid liquid calories, eating real filling foods that support the body's needs. One thing that I didn't include in here is a study called the China study, which basically went through all of the health benefits of eating. I don't remember if it was vegetarian or vegan, and this is why I should have included it in the presentation. But um, when you eat those types of foods, you tend to fill up more quickly, or you feel more full because you eat a larger quantity of food. And so, yeah, that's the general idea. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why eating slowly is important. When you start eating, your stomach begins to stretch, and there are hormones that are released that signal when you get full. Now, it takes about 20 minutes from the time that your stomach is stretched enough to be full for those hormones to reach your brain. And so if you eat quickly, and then you're probably basically what it comes down to is by the time you feel full, whatever you ate for the last 20 minutes was overeating. And so I have a different strategy that I've been using that has helped me lose a little bit of weight, and when I do it consistently. And basically, if you eat slower. That is one way of reducing the amount that you overeat by not realizing that you're full until 20 minutes after you're actually full. Or you've eaten it, sorry, not you're actually full, but 20 minutes after you've eaten a sufficient amount of food to be full. So the following strategies are generally what I recommend to reduce calorie intake without feeling deprived. And one is mindfulness and being tuned into mindful eating is a big part of being reducing the amount of calorie intake. And so the first part is controlling portion size. So what I did, I had hit my like highest weight point at one point, and I saw pictures of myself, and I had a big belly, and I was like, oh no, I better lose some weight. And so I actually literally started eating about half the portion size that I was eating before, and just waiting 20 to 30 minutes and drinking water. And by waiting 20 to 30 minutes and drinking water, I was almost inevitably full, even eating half the portion size of what I was eating before. And I lost 10 pounds in, like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, maybe less than that. The problem is that it does take some discipline. It's not like as much discipline as you might think. Once you start getting used to it, it can become a habit, but you do need to form that habit. And one of the things that isn't in the slides, but I'm going to mention because someone mentioned the motivation side of trying to lose weight is it's good to have accountability partners. And this is something that we do as members of the FTI. We get to know a small group of people, which we call a pod, at a very deep level, and we create accountability partners for each other to form positive habits. So if you have this or any other form of habit that you want to form or type of habit that you want to form, you can get assigned someone or like assign yourself someone or ask someone to be your accountability partner in the pod. And then you check in with each other every day. Hey, are you watching your portion size? I actually had something going with a member of the FTI where we would literally send our pictures of our food before and after we ate it. So like what was left on the plate and what was there first. And she lost, I think she said like 30 pounds. She's, more overweight. But she lost like 30 or 40 pounds in, a month or so of doing that with me. So that was a good example of success. And it really helped me be more conscious when I was doing it. We're not still doing that anymore, but it is very useful if you have an accountability partner and you're showing someone what you eat. It makes you more conscious of what you're eating, and that accountability partner makes you more accountable, literally. In fact, studies show that without an accountability partner, the highest chance of succeeding at a goal is about 65%. With an accountability partner, it goes up to 95%. So having a real human being accountability partner that checks in with you about whether you did what you were supposed to do every day is a huge benefit. Now, if you're not hungry after that 20 to 30 minutes, then you stop eating. If you are feeling signs of physical hunger, like a growling stomach, shakiness from lack of blood sugar, then you eat a little bit more, probably half again what you ate, because maybe you cut back too much. Now, the other thing I can say is like sometimes I used to like, and I still do sometimes finish a meal and I'm 20 or 30 minutes later, I'm stuffed. If you're stuffed, that means you overate and you want to reduce your portion sizes the next time. It's better to just not feel hungry, but not actually feel full. I know that seems weird, but like you don't need to feel full. You just need to feel satiated and so that you're not hungry anymore. And you don't have physical signs of hunger. Another thing is choosing nutrient dense foods keeps you satisfied longer. And nutrient dense does not mean calorie dense. It's like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, which are also shown to be healthier. If you eat too much processed foods, you are more likely to get dementia earlier on in your older years. Um, and the idea is that veggies, fruits, and whole grains have less calories by volume, actually. So they're nutrient dense, but they're calorie not the opposite of dense, what sparse, calorie sparse. You can basically eat more of them and you'll naturally feel full. I've experimented with this, and if I eat like a candy bar, it's got so many calories in it that I might just eat one candy bar and that's like my entire meal. And I have successfully done that and still been losing weight when I ate a candy bar for a meal, but it was like I still like wanted to eat more food. You kind of have this like you kind of your body just expects it to be eating a higher volume of food. But really like that's not what I would recommend. You want to eat healthier food, which will make you like your mind sort of feel more satisfied with the amount of food you've eaten. And that goes back to the China study, which was vegetarian food tends to be less dense in calories as well. I actually, when I cook at home, I eat almost all vegetarian, and I cook almost all vegetarian, occasionally pescatarian, but I'm in the food tech space, so when I go out, I eat just about anything. I try to just not buy meat, and if I don't buy meat at the grocery store, then I don't cook meat, and so it gets rid of the temptation. Um, and I know a lot of people that also do the same thing with not buying candy bars and stuff. I have kids, so I do still buy candy bars, but yeah, I probably should stop doing that if I'm honest. So staying hydrated can also curb unnecessary snacking. Often thirst gets mistaken for hunger. So I've also noticed that after I eat a small portion size, if I drink a significant amount of water, and it sort of makes sense because of what I was saying about how your stomach expands and then that tells your body that it's full. Water is going to make your stomach expand too. So you'll get the feeling of being full from the water as well as the food. Um, and then you want to drink water throughout the day. Try to avoid liquid calories unless it's in place of a dessert or something like that. Sometimes I'll have, like a all natural sugar soda. I really recommend staying away from fructose drinks, which are fructose is really bad for you. So like Coca-Cola, Sprite, all the mainstream sodas, they use fructose and it's really bad for you. If you look up the health impacts of fructose, I should have added a slide for that, but it's bad. And so we only eat that in rare times where there's nothing else. But there are like more natural sodas that you can get or sparkling sodas like that use natural sugars. Like we like in my family the Bolan. I don't have stock in them, but they have a black cherry that my whole family loves. So I can sometimes have that for dessert instead of dessert. So planning meals reduces the temptation of unhealthy choices. So you want to avoid impulse eating and ask yourself if you have those physical signs of hunger before you prepare in advance. And I apologize for the slides. Apparently it's not right. It's not, oh, here we go. It didn't auto size the way that it was supposed to. So um, next, let's talk about those physical signs of hunger. If your stomach is growling, you're low energy, maybe you have a mild or moderate head pain or headache, poor concentration, irritability, shakiness, and nausea are all signs of physical hunger. If you're not getting to any of those things, then you're probably not actually hungry. And sometimes, again, if you're eating nutrient dense or calorie dense foods, you may feel like you're hungry, but you don't have any of these signs. That means that you're probably not actually hungry. Your body has eaten such a small amount of food that has so many calories that you're like, well, surely I have to eat something, right? And because you ate a candy bar that was very, dense in calories. So, I'm going to share the slides for this afterwards as well, if anyone wants. I think I don't have a lot of the sources, but I do have some sources in there. So you also want to be aware of emotional eating patterns to address the root causes of overeating. So, I have some friends that like very much acknowledge that they eat based on emotions, or don't eat based on emotions in some cases. And you want to remember that small, consistent changes lead to lasting results, and trying to form positive habits, like we were talking about there, can help in this situation. Lynn, I'm going to mute you because I don't think you meant to be unmuted. Um, and then So you want to focus on the root causes of impulsive eating, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. So emotional overeating is a common response to feelings like stress or boredom. I will say that you can leverage LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT, to be a supportive tool as you kind of dig into those types of patterns in yourself. We're going to do, are we going to do, probably should do I think we got a request to do like mental health type of stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about research that I read about ChatGPT. There was one study that said ChatGPT responses like therapist ChatGPT responses were seen as more human than the human therapist responses, and that ChatGPT actually was as effective as therapists in some cases in providing therapy, which is interesting. I'm actually working with uh, uh, I judged a mental health and AI competition like hackathon, and it's very interesting to see the types of things coming up out of the group of people that I met there. But I'll say that the future of therapy is going to include AI in some way, shape, or form. I think it's also going to include human beings. I don't think ChatGPT is going to replace all therapists, so that's not what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to put that forward. But I do think through guided conversations with an LLM, you can try to understand like what are the emotions that are leading you to overeat or undereat and develop healthier coping mechanisms and other ways of dealing with things. Also having a peer review, a group of peers that, like we have in the FTI membership, is a really helpful group that you can kind of bounce ideas off of and have a peer mentoring group. It's also good to have a therapist. I From that hackathon, I learned some interesting statistics. I'm doing this from memory. It's not in my notes, but I think it was something like 50% of people see a therapist at some point in their lifetime. Oh, no, no, here's what it was. Over 50% of people have some I think that's actually true that 50% of people see a therapist at some point in their lifetime. So there's a lot of stigma with seeing a therapist, but actually, like, we should realize that the other statistic that I saw was that um, I think, yeah, I have some of this in the later slides. So let me just wait for that and I'll go back into it. So, so, um, So it is true that, and I kind of covered this, that, while ChatGPT can be helpful, it's also good to use a licensed therapist. And, the ChatGPT is either free or nearly free. At least there's no incremental cost. Here are the statistics. So 57.4% of individuals in the US experience at least one mental disorder in their lifetime, but only about 40% of those individuals receive professional treatment. That was pretty concerning to me, and I think we have to do a separate topic on mental health because of that, because it really shows that mental health is like a something that affects the majority of people, and yet very few people, like less than half of people who have mental health issues, are actually getting therapy, which is concerning. Now, uh, basically, this is why I say, like, destigmatizing mental health care and encouraging people to seek therapy is really important. So that's redundant. So therapy is basically, if you look at it's become an integral part of Americans' lives, with over about 30% of people have engaged in therapy since 2020. So in the last 5 years, about a third of people in the country have been to therapy. So that's a pretty high number for in the last 5 years. So it's not like it seems a little silly to demonize a third of the country, right? And then you also have to take into account that over half of the country has mental health challenges. So it also seems a little silly to demonize the solution, or at least the best known solution today, to a problem that over half of Americans have. So I think it's important that we rethink our approach and our mindset on therapy and mental health, getting help for mental health reasons. Um, There's also a problem with cost. That's one thing that, one of the things that I do in my profitability consulting firm is I get people, anyone that works at a company with at least 5 employees, I can get all of the employees, unlimited use, no copay, no deductible mental health, services, along with a whole bunch of other healthcare services. So if anyone does not have access to that type of service and needs it, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat and I can get you that kind of help, so that we can get more Americans access to healthcare. Um, and so it's really important to remember that therapy is a proactive way of trying to get help, and it's not a sign of weakness at all. Mental health is, while some of it can be preventable, some of it is genetic, and you know, the long story short is if you don't try to find ways of dealing with the issues that you have, they tend to get worse. And I would say that's true about all problems in our life. If we don't try to solve those problems or try to deal with them, then ignoring them generally makes them worse. So that's about the core of it. So that the things that I forgot is the China study and about why eating vegetarian is actually tends to have healthier outcomes, although you have to be sure to get enough calcium, because a vegetarian diet often doesn't have enough calcium. But with supplements and like careful diet planning, and when I say careful diet planning, this stuff isn't hard now, guys. Like ChatGPT and other LLMs make these things super easy. You can say like, give me a meal plan for the healthiest diet for me, and explain your situation, and um it will come up with a meal plan of what you can eat to get a well-balanced diet, and or you can get supplements. Although I will give a caveat for supplements that um, a lot of supplements like don't test for whether or not the supplements can be absorbed by the body. And so for example, vitamin D might be in the supplement, but the vitamin D might be in a form that your body can't absorb. And it's still perfectly legal for them to sell that kind of supplement. So, if anyone wants the brand of supplements, my father did a huge amount of research about supplements and which brands actually have digestible versions of the vitamin. So, if people want me to send you the brand of
Hey,
vitamin,
what? What do you want?
um, I don't have any stock in the brand of vitamin or anything like that. It's just the brand of vitamins that I use because my dad recommended them. So, if anyone wants that, I'm happy to send it to you as well. So now we're gonna go to questions, and I will say I forgot to introduce myself, didn't I? Well, maybe I just gave the presentation. I'll be a typical technical guy and introduce myself when it's way too late in the event. And so uh, so. My name's Garrett Lang, by the way. I'm a software developer turned software inventor in North Jersey, now an entrepreneur. My hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy. I'm also the executive director of the Freethinker Institute, which is the group that brings you tonight's event and all of this series of events on Tuesday evenings. We do a meeting an event almost every Tuesday evening. We're a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members, and we want to help our members be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth and to be fair while always being polite. And we do that through transformational personal and professional development. We have these events on Tuesdays, and then we have uh, weekly members events for people who are members of the FTI, which does not cost anything. And in fact, if I make the money that I hope to with my for-profit businesses, you'll actually be able to earn money by being an FTI member. So very unusual type of membership. Um, and we have only one rule in the FTI, and it's strictly enforced, and that is to remain polite. And that way we kind of keep everybody in the logical portion of the brain. When people are impolite, we tend to get emotionally hijacked or fight or flight hijacked, and we stop thinking rationally and we start getting emotional and upset and angry. And that's not where we want any of us to be tonight. We want to be in the calm, cool, collected part of our brains, which are the most advanced part of the brains, but it's also the latest part to come about. So that's why it gets hijacked by the other two. Um, so that said, um, I like to tell people that the more you disagree with someone, the more you have to learn by asking them thoughtful questions about why they came to a very different conclusion than you. And also, when someone else points out facts that we weren't aware of, remember that we all have confirmation bias, which means we ignore data that doesn't agree with our current opinions. We like to stick with our opinions, but actually, we should always be looking for reasons we're wrong rather than reasons we're right. You'll naturally look for reasons you're right, but when you're looking for reasons you're wrong, you'll find that you can admit you're wrong, and when you do that with good judgment, you're immediately right again. You're more right than you were before. And we call listening to other people with empathy. In the FTI, we call it listening to understand. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and take any hands, questions, comments, or if people want to, we're very, how do you say, participatory. So, if anyone has health tips that you want to give, feel free to do that as well. If I didn't cover anything, or even if I did, if you just want to accentuate it, that's fine too. But feel free to make any comments or questions that you want. But each time that you raise your hand, just limit your comment or question to one comment or question at a time. You can raise your hand as many times as you want and try to keep to less than 2 to 3 minutes for each time you raise your hand. Once someone talks, anyone is allowed to respond to what they say. It doesn't just have to be me, although I will respond so that people feel heard. But and if people can, like when you have something you want to say, do what Carl just did and raise your hand, and that way we'll take people's new questions and comments in the order that they came in. And you can find that under the raise hand button at the bottom, which might be under the more if you don't see it listed at the bottom of your screen. So that said, thank you everyone for your time and attention. And Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Garrett, for putting that presentation together. You say you focus on practical philosophy, but I would say this practical health, I guess. I don't know if
I
that's a
consider
first.
that practical philosophy. Philosophy is about a love of wisdom, right? And
Yeah,
is
exactly.
about making better decisions. Being healthy is a decision. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
Well, my understanding of practical philosophy is how to live a good life. So definitely health, obviously. Yeah. Um, I just wanted to add three very, very brief points. One that I looked up the China study, and it's vegan. It's not vegetarian, so
Thank
they
you.
don't any kind of animal products, which I guess would ex makes the lack of calcium even worse because you won't be able to have milk or anything. But I think
Yep.
with enough vegetables, you would definitely need some supplementation, and also vitamin D and vitamin B12, unfortunately. Um, I also added a couple of things as you were talking about emotionally based diet. I remember reading a book called Volumetrics years back that focuses on this idea of, I'm sorry, nutrient density. And I remember seeing that the pictures of like what a little handful of French fries in terms of calories versus like a huge bowl of broccoli, like in terms of how much that would fill you up. And that was the whole point of volumetrics in terms like volume, in terms of filling you up faster. And in terms of emotional eating, Bright Light Eating Program focuses on the whole thing of emotion. She actually considers she was actually a drug addict who then went to grad school and focused on nutrition. And she discovered that like foods, especially like flour, sugar, are actually like cocaine in terms of this, what it does to the brain, because it's like
Yeah.
plants that are like super, super fine. And so it's right for addiction. So a
Thank
lot of
you.
that program is based on emotional eating and how to overcome that. And then similarly, a program called Noom, which is focused on the psychology of overeating, which is interesting as well. So I wanted to ask you though, as my last comment, to if you could put the name of the brand on the chat, if that's okay, of your father's supplements.
Yes, I will put it in the chat. And in fact,
Thank
I have the vitamin C right in front of me because I have a cold. So, and you can only get this brand of vitamins through a physician because I guess it's to show that it's really a better version. Um
Really?
yeah. So,
Mhm.
um, but there you go. It's
Right.
Zymogen. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but it looks like Zymogen. So yeah. And the thing that you mentioned about sugar, I should have had a slide on that too. There was a very interesting, so much stuff that I just, not to be too am I, but I had a death in the family very recently. And so my time has been more limited than usual to prepare the presentation. So, I left out a lot of stuff in this one. Sugar is a big one that I left out. There was actually a lot of new information uncovered how the sugar lobby basically vilified fat as being the reason that there were all these health problems, but it actually turned out that it wasn't fat that caused all those health problems, it was sugar. And the sugar lobby basically blamed fat and said, hey, look, these guys are the bad guys, not us. And there's lots of evidence that this was done very intentionally. And really, sugar is not only super addicting, but it's very bad for your health. And so, trying to reduce your sugar intake is really important. I used to eat way too much sugar. And it's one of the things like, my father was very good about trying to get me to eat less sugar, and I have reduced my sugar intake quite a bit since becoming more aware of the fact that sugar is so bad for your health. So I think that's a great point, Carl, is people just, remember that, sugar is not healthy. Natural sugars are better than, artificial sugars. But that's where the fructose is like one of the worst kinds of sugars and sweeteners. So you don't want that. And also all the fake sweeteners tend to be worse for you than the actual sugar. So I'm not saying to use the stevias, etc., because stevia and some of the other ones tend to have worse health impacts than the actual sugar itself. So you just kind of if you don't eat a lot of sweets, you will be very sensitive to sweets, and even a little bit of sugar will make you feel satisfied. But you kind of have to wean yourself off of it slowly. It's one that I haven't gotten rid of yet. I'm still unfortunately addicted to sugar, but I take a lot less than I used to. It's
Um,
only
yeah,
addiction. Yeah.
if I can add briefly to that,
Mm.
Garrett, because I totally agree. There's actually one of the great things about like science-based research that there's a lot of information now on artificial ingredient sugars, sweeteners that are actually don't kill your microbiome. So there's actually three that I'm aware of, maybe four. They're actually good for you and do not raise your blood sugar when you eat them. So, and they're starting to get into products now. Like I have like really really great ice cream that has erythritol in it, and erythritol is one of those artificial sweeteners. It tastes just like sugar, and there's no aftertaste, and it doesn't spike your blood sugar. So it's a really good alternative. There's allulose, monk fruit, and xylitol. Those are the only four. Everything else, like maltitol, sorbitol, and stuff that you see in cheaper products, those are terrible for you, and they will kill your microbiome. So do not engage in those.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
another one. I didn't get into the microbiome, but it's an important aspect. That's your gut bacteria. For those not familiar, the gut bacteria is being learned about, and it has a much bigger impact on our both physical and emotional well-being than people ever used to realize. And they're still, learning more and more about that in
Yeah.
current research. So
I was shocked that your microbiome makes 90% of your serotonin,
interesting.
right? And this is like we think it's in the brain, but it's actually made in the microbiome and then communicated with the brain. So it's
Cool.
fascinating. Yeah.
Didn't know that. Thanks, Ginny.
Sorry for coming in so late. What an important topic. I love this topic. And I don't know if I share this with this group, but my own personal experience, I was born in a very rural Korea, South Korea, in the 50s. And um, there was no such a thing as sugar to be had because I didn't even know what sugar candy was. So, and I rarely brush my teeth. I remember brushing my teeth maybe once every couple of months in the river with salt water, I mean, using salt to brush my teeth. And I come to America at the age of 11 or 12, and I had no cavities. But I come to America, I discovered candy, cookies. And within a couple of years, I started getting cavities. But I didn't think much about it, and I ate a lot of sugar for the most of my life until about 10, 15 years ago when I kept, hearing about how bad sugar was for you. So then initially when I stopped eating candy, sugar, all that stuff, for about a year, it was really tempting. It was really challenging. But then after a while, I just did not miss eating sugar, candy, and all that stuff. So even like today, if I were to go to a party and people are eating cakes and cookies and whatever I don't miss it one bit. So I am completely sugar-free,
Nice.
than I'm lately. So,
Great. You
What
can give
about,
me your slice of cake.
yeah.
what's that?
What he said, yeah, go ahead. Say it
Yeah,
again.
so just sharing my own personal story of the experience with sugar. And I don't know if you've already mentioned it, but I'm reading more and more about how the sugar and especially these artificial sweetener are causing, dementia. And
Yeah,
it's understandable. It's in the brain, it's killing your brain basically. Yeah.
yeah,
So
definitely. And in fact, I read a funny story on a history email list that I'm on that talked about the English royalty when processed sugar started to become the norm. The English royalty ate so much processed sugar that their teeth turned all black, their mouths turned black. It was like, literally like a plague kind of thing. Yeah, so uh, yeah, it's not good. Um, thanks, Jenny. And Jenny, out of curiosity, do you eat natural sugars like fruit juices?
I would have to no, I drink absolutely not. I don't drink alcohol ever. The only thing I drink all the time, at any time, is water. Just water is the only thing. Not only, actually, there is one exception. Harvest coconut water.
Mhm.
What is it? Harvest. Anyway, it's very expensive coconut
Coconut water.
water from this particular island in Polynesia somewhere. You can't get it from anywhere else, and it's very expensive. $5 for this small bottle of Harvest. What is it? Oh, gee, hold on.
Well, it's just good coconut water. Has electrolytes, natural electrolytes in it. So it's a really good thing to have if you.
It's this Harvest coconut water. This is the only sweet drink I drink. Not only, I mean, I only buy one of these every couple of weeks because it is so expensive. But and then I do eat yogurt with a little tiny bit of sugar in it, like non-dairy yogurt because I'm lactose intolerant, among other things. So that's about the only sugar I think I eat. I mean, I do eat bananas. I think that's natural sugar. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, eating the fruit itself is supposed to be much better than drinking the fruit juice because
that's
the
right.
the fruit is meant to be eaten like the whole, including the pulp and everything. And so it's much healthier to eat the fruit, like including the pulp, but drinking just fruit juice, I think, is actually not super healthy. And one of the times I tried to quit sugar entirely, I kept drinking fruit juice, and it was my dad that told me, no, no, you can't do that. Like, because that's still sugar, and it's, yes, it's natural sugar, but it's concentrated sugar nonetheless. And so it made me crave sugar that much more. So
Garrett, you sounds like you had great dad. Gee whiz.
yeah, he
None
he was
of
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hey,
generation
Jeannie,
before us. Yeah, they sugar their life away. Blah, blah.
Jeannie, for the price of that Harvest bottle, it should come in its own coconut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it says here one ingredient in this coconut water, coconut. That's it. Um,
Cool.
so check it out in the store. But I love it. That's the only thing I drink. Very small amounts a day. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny.
Mhm.
Andy, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Um, there's you had mentioned before. There's that man who says "Know thyself," right?
Hmm.
I think that is so key, and that therapy maybe should come first because I've seen in my own life as well. I grew up eating different kinds of food, and then I started eating different kinds of food, and it affected the body. at one time I was the size of a Mini Cooper. And I was then told that my body came from India. So why would I think that different kinds of food will work for me when the body has been Indian for 500 years? So then I started moving my eating habits to more of the Indian ways. And that really changed a lot. Do you have any research or notes on knowing yourself that much, knowing where your actual body came from and eating based on that? Because that makes a huge difference as well. Another thing you had mentioned about the 20 minutes for eating.
Yep.
One thing was about grace, like grace and honoring the food. It changes the energetic vibration of the food as well and the impact on the body and the cells. And the business around, and because I remember for some of us, we're told that we don't, every time we're eating, we're supposed to chew 20, 30 times. Like it's that slow.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned sugar. And for some of us as well, sugar is actually sacred. Because as you can see, it can kill us. So if we change our mindset a bit about the food and honoring and respecting of it as well, I think this would make a huge impact on us.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the therapy, generational attitudes. Younger people have a different attitude towards getting therapy. I think it's the older generation that, airing your dirty laundry seems to come
Yeah.
up, right?
That is true.
Yeah. So if there could be a bit of a push towards them, that no, because I myself had to go, when I went to therapy, I took it as either you're going for confession to church or you're going to go to therapy, but you got to go to one or the other. Anyways, that was mine. So I was hoping that maybe the impact of the body where it came from, because again, for me, I wanted to come to Earth. And so my ancestors gave me a body to come here. And so the body for me is a temple, which I need to honor so that I can do the work that I need to do here. Thank you.
So, Mandy, can I ask you a question? You said that you came to Earth with your body. I'm wondering.
No, I didn't. I wanted to come to Earth. I'm a speck of fairy dust.
Yeah, right. Because I was going to think if you're from another planet, you might want to look at the nutrition from that planet.
Yeah.
But there's
No.
actually I do have some information about that. It's something that also occurred to me about but not where you came from, but also like actually evolutionary speaking, like we are 300,000 years old, but our bodies are still haven't evolved to the modern day. And there's a lot of research about how like when agriculture started, that it created a lot of the diseases and everything that we're in today. But there's another aspect of it. So it really helps now with the advent of DNA information to know like where your ancestors came from.
Yeah.
And then kind of try to find that food. It definitely makes a lot of sense to me. And then there's another aspect of it, which is eating according to the seasons. So there's information about like, unfortunately with the way our supply chain is right now, that we're getting food pretty much 24/7, where it's technically not natural, right? So it's like you should kind of like eat with the seasons. Like, if there's like plenty in the spring, you eat more fruits, and if it's less, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that, there seems to be some research on that as well, which is fascinating.
I've tried it with myself. I grew up eating mostly Indian, vegetarian. Then I went and grew up, and then I started eating whatever. And then I went back to eating Indian, and it made a huge difference. Indian, the problem there is like you don't just put one or two spices, salt and pepper. It's 120 flipping spices are put in there. Who's got time to cook like that? Honestly.
Well, that's why you have garam masala, Mandy.
Oh,
You put all the spices together one time and then you just use it over and over again.
Or you just go to Indian restaurants. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I will say another thing just from my personal experience is like that agrees with the China study is when I eat vegan food, I feel so much healthier afterwards. I just like my body doesn't feel weighed down and heavy like it does with other types of food. I just feel healthier, and the science does seem to agree with that.
Yeah.
And just to lend credibility to what you're saying, Mandy, about like your background in genetics and diet, that's a new area that's being explored. And there have been studies that are looking at and clinical trials on different types of genetic diets. It's still not very advanced, but there's a lot of promise with looking at genetic diets. This comes back again to something my dad told me, that there are different diets by blood type, and so there's some research saying that different blood
Yeah.
types is genetic.
But
Like
I
go ahead.
think that before, like, yes, studies and blah, blah, blah. But I think that if we sit with ourselves and learn even more about ourselves, I think we will get to those answers on our own as well of what is right for us, and don't have to wait for the study. Like, I didn't wait for no study. I just, ended up getting a conversation with my mother, who just told me straight up, why the hell do you think that kind of food's going to work for you? And sometimes your parents say stuff and I'm like, okay, fine, let me try the other food, and then realizing it works. So I think sometimes studies, yeah, but if we, again, knowing ourselves and how much we want to know about ourselves.
Yeah, I think those studies do help us know about ourselves because they show that there's a science behind, there's like an actual statistically significant difference in eating a diet based on your genetics. And it'll also say like, well, maybe you have some recessive gene of some ancestor who 300 years ago was from another part of the world, and that actually changed your genetic, makeup so that actually you're more in tune with one thing that's not traditionally from India. Now, you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
know that without the science coming up with that specific like tweak or, modification to the diet coming from your genetic background. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense, Mandy? Like, and again, it's great to go on instinct when there's no good science on something, but we actually should probably repeat because I think it was probably over 3 years ago that I did a presentation on this. But basically, what I tried to show is that essentially about how religion and science can get along. And when I say religion, I mean religion, spirituality, whatever kind of belief system that's not science. I really call it science and non-science. Any other belief system other than science, how they can get along, and really what
Non-science or nonsense?
no, not nonsense. No, because there is and a lot of people would call it nonsense. And what I would say though is, I think I have a pretty good logical argument that actually, you can't come to believe everything that's true without also agreeing with some things that are not scientifically provable. They're literally not ever going to be scientifically provable, but they are true. And
Mm-hmm.
but what science is really good at is creating a consistent body of knowledge that you can build on with a high degree of certainty. And so, where science has a good answer, I would argue we should trust science. Where science does not have a good answer, then we should be very open to spirituality, religion, what I call non-science, not nonsense, but non-science, because at that point, like there's no consistent answer anyway. Trust, whatever sources you want to trust.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
I
give a presentation now. I'll make the logical argument for it another night.
Yeah. I also I forgot to mention as well, the window of eating as well. If we could reduce that a bit, that's helpful as well.
Yeah, I have heard good things about intermittent fasting and that studies say that it's good. I have done intermittent fasting without even meaning to.
Yeah.
Um, but like there are also days that I'm just like, no, I'm hungry and I need to eat. So,
Yeah.
so I think it's good, and if you can get into a rhythm where it feels natural, great, and it is shown to be good. But then I wouldn't like brute force it, if you know what I mean. Like if it doesn't feel natural, then I wouldn't. I really do believe what you said, Mandy, which is know yourself, know your body and what it needs, and if you're showing physical signs of hunger and your stomach is growling and you're shaky because you don't have enough blood sugar, eat something.
Yeah. It should never be forced. There should be a load of compassion that comes to the self so that you can move organically into that healthy state.
Yeah, I
And it was,
find like when I eat small portions, I need to eat 3 meals a day. I do, but I eat very small portions in those 3 meals a day. So someone was mentioning earlier about how capitalism may be pushing the three meal diet, but I actually think small portion sizes is what makes me eat 3 meals a day. I used to only eat 2 meals a day for decades, but when I started eating smaller portion sizes, I found I needed 3 meals. But my meal is like 2 cups of food, literally 2 cups of food, and that's it. So, I need 3 meals because I'm not eating very much. So, but anyway, Carl, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I eat like 3 meals and two snacks a day, like every 3 hours. I think. Because I mean, my brain, spend my day thinking, and I could feel those dips where suddenly if I eat something, then I'm thinking better. So I guess maybe
Yeah.
connected. But I wanted to ask you something you said, Garrett, when you said something about something that is true, but that can never be proven. And my first instinct was like, then how do you know it's true? And I was curious if you have any examples of what you consider true that will never be proven.
Um, so yes. And I think it's pretty clear is I like fish food ice cream. It's
What
true.
is it?
I like fish food ice cream. The fish food like from Fish the band. It's like this chocolate ice cream with these chocolate fish and marshmallow. It's a Ben
Oh,
and Jerry's flavor. So
okay.
I like that ice cream.
Yeah.
Now, I know that it's true. Can you prove that it's true to me? No, you can't prove that it's true. You can't prove that it's true without me telling you, if you choose another ice cream and come up to, and you have to create a scientific experiment that doesn't involve me, revealing what I like and what I don't. And even if I say that it's true today, well, tomorrow I could stop liking it. So
What is the thing that you say is true?
that I like that type of ice cream.
But isn't that a subjective opinion?
It is, and that's exactly why it's not provable.
Right, right, right.
It's a
Oh, yeah.
subjective opinion.
That's yeah, subjective opinions cannot be proven.
But
I
I,
get that.
I call it a subjective truth because
Right.
for me right now, that is the truth. But tomorrow
Right.
I could change it. And so there is no scientific experiment that will definitively prove it true or false because I'm allowed to
Right.
change my mind whenever I
Because
want.
okay, that makes sense. Because
That's a whole
scientific things can be
classification. It's
yeah.
a whole classification or categorization of ideas. Pretty much every subjective truth is
Right.
not provable. You just kind of have to trust other people when they share their truth with you authentically that
Right.
they're being honest about it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, that goes without saying.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's when people say my truth, your truth.
right.
Uh, but the only thing that when we talk about science and scientific method, the only thing that can be proven is objective facts. And that so there's really the difference between objective and subjective.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is science is really good at those objective facts and coming to conclusions about objective facts. So
Yeah.
when science has said that the Earth is an oblate spheroid and it's not flat, I'm going to trust the science on that one. I'm not going to say Earth is flat, and I'm not going to believe the people who say it. I did watch their YouTube video. That's like an hour I'll never get back in my life. But and I did not mean to raise my hand. So um, so that was a
Yeah,
much
the problem, I think the only problem when it gets contentious is when people claim that the subjective opinion is actually an objective fact.
correct. And then, whether or not Earth is an oblate spheroid or flat is very provably true or false.
Right.
And so that's a place where I would say we should go to science. And,
Exactly.
like when you talk about health, it gets a little more complicated, right? Like there have been studies going back and forth for my entire life that potato skins are healthy and then unhealthy, right? Back and forth over and over again. And they keep
Yeah.
being healthy and unhealthy, healthy and unhealthy. Well, which one is it, right? And maybe we just don't know yet. And so for that one, I'm just going to trust my gut. If I like potato skins, I'm going to eat them. And if I do, I'm not, right?
Right.
There's
Well,
no
at least
definitive science.
it's very clear to me that when it comes to nutrition science, there's a lot of
There's a lot of
conflicts
facts. And that's where I say
conflicts of
that
interest.
That's where I say the China study has a pretty good argument that people should be vegan. And I think
Yeah.
there's a good ethical argument to be made for it too,
Yeah.
where, killing animals for food, is not necessarily the most ethical thing to do.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that, I
Yeah.
think 100 years from now, eating animals for food will be looked at the same way that, probably 200 years from now at the latest, it'll be looked at the same way that, 200 years ago we looked at slavery as like a normal thing.
Yeah.
Now, we would say slavery is completely unethical and I think and barbaric. And yet 200 years from now, I think I'll be looked at as being barbaric for eating meat.
Yeah. We just have to teach the lions that for the
Well,
gazelles.
the lions I think are okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
lions
yeah,
for a
I mean
reason.
that's the point that a lot of people make. I think the problems that we see and the health issues that we see with meat eating, it simply has to do with the state of factory farming more than actually grass-fed beef, for example. Because I mean, the science is pretty clear. I mean, we've evolved as meat eaters, so we're built for that. So it's not that it's unnatural. It's just that the actual quality of the food today is abysmal, and that's what's creating a lot of diseases. Not to mention all the terrible things that we eat, right? The SAD diet, which is basically just processed foods with a lot of
Yeah.
like, a whole long list of additional ingredients that you cannot pronounce. That's just for,
I'm
Yeah.
just going to interrupt and say the gladiators were vegetarians.
Hmm.
really.
Yeah, there's a fantastic documentary out, Forks Over Knives.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Folks Over Knife is vegan based. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
And I think it's there I watched the about the gladiators when they
yeah.
pulled them up
So
from wherever.
my guess is that the reason that they were primarily plant-based is that it was more expensive to
Yeah.
to eat meat and fish. Because the average but you're right that they were, but I think the average GDP per capita, the average income per capita in modern USD dollars in the Roman Empire was about $500 per year that people lived on. So
Mhm.
you're talking about scarce amounts of, money.
But I was talking in strength.
Yeah.
Like you could still be strong
Oh yeah.
without
Yeah.
the
There
meat
are
component.
there are
Yeah.
bodybuilders that are vegan. There are vegan bodybuilders. They're eating a huge amount of food.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at one time we were told that, for protein we have to have meat.
Right. But there's
Uh,
lots of vegetarian and vegan proteins. So yeah, beans and there are certain vegetables that have protein. But you're right, Mandy. Like there's a lot of the meat lobby. The meat lobby has convinced us all that you can't get real protein without meat. But actually, yeah, you can. There are lots of ways to do it. And your favorite LLM would tell you exactly how to do it with a great meal plan.
I was going to also add, um, sometimes when you're craving, I mean, from my research or me search, craving sugar, it's actually low protein.
Hmm.
Like certain times the body will tell you by craving something, you're actually missing something out of your body.
And dehydration,
Mm,
I believe
correct.
that.
like meaning, yeah,
Yeah,
like when you feel
because
like you're,
sugar is like a fast energy rush, right? Sugar is like the closest molecules to pure energy for the body, the ATP creation. So sugar is like a fast way to get energy. So if you're, lacking in food, like craving sugar kind of makes sense. But I think if you do what Ginny did, which is wean yourself off of sugar entirely, which I hope to do someday, I'm hoping that I'll get there. Um, I definitely cut down a lot. I used to drink like four bottles of soda, each of which was like the U.S. daily an allowance of sugar. I used to drink a 64-ounce bottle of Snapple in a day. Like sometimes more than that. So ridiculous amounts of sugar. Um, Trying to cut down. Well, anyone else have questions or we were shorter today?
you ever come across, here it's pretty big in the software engineering world, Soylent,
I have
something
not.
called Soylent.
I know what it is.
It's
I know
basically
I've
what
heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
it's basically like it was created by someone who um, realized that all the coders basically had terrible diets because they're coding 24/7 and they like all they eat is pizza and candy and soda. And
Yeah.
so he was trying to develop a drink or a shake that would be a meal replacement with all the nutrients that your body needs, all the vitamins, so that you can just make it quickly and drink that as a meal replacement.
Yeah, I don't think
You know,
that's a good idea because because like when I and I've kind of done this except it didn't have all the nutrients, right? I just drank like sugary drinks and that was like
right.
meal replacement, but it's
And
like you still crave food. And so what you end up doing is you get enough calories from the drink, but then
yeah,
you're still craving the food. Like when you just drink food, like you don't get the satisfaction of having consumed something voluminous, right? And having that feeling of, and that's why vegetarian is so much better, is like when you eat like vegetables, you can eat a large amount of vegetables without a lot of calories, and so you feel naturally full more easily, and you're consuming less calories when you feel that full. So
no, I agree. It never felt satisfying to me.
yeah,
Um, but in a pinch, it's better than drinking soda and
better
eating
than
pizza.
soda.
Yeah, but the other thing about the meal replacement is I recall that it started to make people really sick and they stopped it. There were a lot of problems with it.
You mean with soylent specifically? Okay.
So,
Well, I know that there's a lot of other ones on the market now, like Huel and stuff like that. So it's going to just
uh,
technology there that you can. But you're right. You shouldn't drink your calories. Actually,
now the one thing just to bring in here, because one thing that um, I've always understood is that you should eat a variety of things.
Yep.
That probably one of the most important things is you eat a variety of natural foods to get a variety of things like macronutrients and all of these other things that you may need. So if you're just drinking the same liquid every day, you're probably that's not very healthy long term.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What other questions or comments do people have? Anyone else have other tips that, we had a bunch of good ones that people gave so far. So we're all about free thinking here, and it's not one direction communication. We all learn from each other. That's part of the FTI. Like while we do presentations, like I always learn from people's Q&A after the presentation. And that's important that we're all on this lifelong, journey of learning. So Anna, what do you have to share?
Thanks. So just a quick little thing. I read this a
Yeah.
while somewhere. As far as fruit sugars go, like eating fruits and all that do have sugar, what I read was the reason that fruit sugar is not as bad as like the fake stuff is because it comes with nutrients. So when we eat the fruit, we're also getting like the fiber and the vitamin C and whatever other nutrients are in that particular fruit. So the sugar isn't necessarily better, even though it's natural. It's the nutrients that we're getting in addition to that sugar. So it's
Yeah.
a bit more balanced, I suppose, is what I read.
Mhm. Yeah, and all the phytonutrients, and I mean, there's like a thousands different things, all from nature, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing because, gosh, we really don't need any of the processed stuff.
Right.
We really, really don't. And somehow over time they've kind of put it in our heads that we do, but we don't. And I'm sure everyone's heard this before, but when we go grocery shopping, to stay on the perimeters of the grocery store and not go through the aisles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
you're absolutely
anything that comes in a box or a product with a barcode, you should not.
Right. Or as already was mentioned, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I did a quick fact check, and that is true. Um,
What is true? The
that fruit juice, the reason that natural fruit juice is healthier is because it comes with fiber and nutrients. Um, but the what's also true is that fruit juice, how do I say this? So if you have like artificial sugars here, and you have actual fruit here, fruit juice is kind of in the middle, where the actual fruit is better than the fruit juice, but the fruit juice is better than the artificial sugar stuff. Fruit
Yeah.
juice has a little bit of nutrients in it, but it doesn't have the fiber, and so the sugar gets absorbed faster, which can cause
Mhm.
insulin spikes, and so that's part of the problem with fruit juice, which I definitely get a quick,
Yeah.
a quick energy burst from fruit juice, but it's much better to,
Yeah.
I'm curious whether or not fresh squeezed orange juice would be doable. If so, it'll give me
Yeah.
an excuse to do
You
more
get
fresh
the
squeezed orange
you
juice.
get Yeah, because you get the pulp and everything on top
Yeah,
of it. Yeah. The what I've noticed too, and this is probably the biggest tip, is to read the ingredients for everything that you're about to buy, because even stuff like orange juice or pineapple juice sometimes is filled with completely foreign stuff. And there's a lot of preservatives and antibiotics just to keep preserving it on the shelves longer, and that would kill all the nutrients that's in it already. So it's kind of like defeats the purpose, and it will spike your blood sugar on top of that. So
yeah.
uh,
So
everything should be one ingredient really,
fresh
or
squeezed
like,
orange juice can be good in moderation, it says.
yeah.
So, Darlene, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna, since we're defending fruit, oranges, the not yeah, oranges, lemons, and limes, they have a chemical in them that when I mean you only need like probably like a fourth of an orange or maybe slightly less than a fourth of an orange. So when we overstretch our ligaments or tendons, or we strain them, then um, what they do when we consume that chemical, it starts a process where when it's healing the ligaments and tendons, um, and then and it's like a four-step process. It has to go through a biological four-step process, and at the last step is like when it twists, it kind of they twist, they tighten up the tendon, and then so so you don't want to be stretching them as you're as they're healing. You want to stretch them after they're healed, but like athletes will pay a lot of money for doctors to inject this chemical into their injuries so that way they can heal faster. But we can like if we're eating collagen and are having that type of fruit once or twice a day. Well, I would suggest twice a day if you're really trying to heal up from injury. You can get healed up faster.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Darlene. Anyone else have other comments or questions?
Mhm.
I'm out of curiosity, is the topic of science versus non-science an interesting one to people? Maybe put in the chat if it's interesting to you. Anna, you had your hand up.
Depends what you mean by non-science.
Well, like an inconsistent knowledge base is basically like something that something that doesn't have uh, a logically consistent set of rules to come to the conclusion that it's true.
Okay.
Meaning
Would that
from
include
axioms and rules of inference, and being able to get from axioms and rules of inference to true.
mm,
So
would
start
it
from, start
include
from, start from,
pseudoscience?
what's that?
Would it include pseudoscience or what people
Yeah,
label
it does.
woo-woo?
I think it does. Like the only difference is that I would say pseudoscience falls into the same category as non-science because it's not proven yet. Now, some things that are called pseudoscience might actually be, like a lot of people would say reincarnation is pseudoscience, but I'm gonna in a couple of like in the next month or two, I'm gonna give a presentation on how reincarnation is actually largely proven to be true by peer-reviewed studies, which I only learned from an FTI event, by the way. I gave my a priori argument, my logical argument defending reincarnation, and someone's like, Garrett, this has been studied by science. Everyone knows it's true. And I'm like, no, no, everyone doesn't know that. So,
Are you familiar with the telepathy tapes podcast?
no.
So, you know how I've been talking about panpsychism and the sense of the universe being all conscious and stuff. So the telepathy tapes actually are studying non-speaking autistic kids that their mothers have claimed for years and years and years that they could actually read their minds, and like, they would hide candy and they would find it, whatever, and like to a 95% plus accuracy rate of reading minds. And then a actual researcher at John Hopkins and Harvard started like scientifically testing it with 95 plus
Wow,
accuracy.
that's very
And
interesting.
then it's been videotaped and camera and stuff. And then there's the documentarian who was kind of skeptic, started going all over the world and documenting. And so now it's like one of the hottest podcasts because people are going, okay, telepathy is proven to be real.
Yeah.
And it like connects to this idea of panpsychism, and everything's connected, and really fascinating stuff. So that would be a good example of pseudoscience that
Yeah. That's an
is
example of
actually
pseudoscience that is scientifically proven, it sounds like.
yeah. Yeah.
Those are peer-reviewed studies that are repeatable. Cool.
You know,
You
you
go
know when
ahead.
when you say pseudoscience, is that just based on the West?
I don't know.
Because like the telepathy and reincarnation in the East, it's always been there, right? Like we're taught. I mean, you can connect to your ancestors, you can get
Yeah.
guidance, blah blah blah. But it's all considered
So
pseudo in the
examples
West.
examples of Eastern pseudoscience, according to ChatGPT, and you may not like this one, is like Ayurveda, medicines, like heavy metal Latin remedies, like trying to cure people of mercury or arsenic using Ayurveda medicine. There are a bunch of other ones like chi, like energy flow and meridians. I would guess that Feng Shui is generally considered pseudoscience, but I have to say, my parents had, my dad and his wife had Feng Shui done for their house, and I've never slept better in a house than their house. Like, I always slept so well there.
Yeah,
So,
it
I
can't be
think something
proven.
to it. Well,
Yeah,
I think it
but
could be proven. Like,
it
I
can
think
be
it
proven if you sit with like. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it could be proven. It just needs to be studied correctly. And so
Yeah.
I would, given my experience, my personal experience, it's something that if I had huge amounts of money, I would commission some studies to like
But that's
have
not.
people. What's
Yes,
that?
I was going to say no. I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to say no. I meant to say that if it's part of your plan here, the gift that you're supposed to give mankind, if that is part of your plan, then you would automatically have gone that direction. You don't need to know about that.
Well, we'll
Yeah,
see.
this doesn't make
Maybe it is
sense.
part of my plan for later on, Mandy.
Oh, no comments. But we're coming with gifts and yeah, in your own background as well, you had people who wanted to support mankind this way, and you're continuing along. That's why your ancestors gave you a body to do this work that you're doing.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Anna, go ahead. You have your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thanks. I was just gonna, this is just like a silly little tip. So I mean, with that said, I've always been kind of a naturally slow eater to the point that I like annoy people because I'm still eating and everyone's all done. But I think that like over the last year or so, I I switched over to smaller utensils. And so I was a slow eater anyway, but now I'm even a slower eater because like so instead of like using a dinner spoon, I'll use like a teaspoon and or in, for a fork instead of a dinner fork I'll use like a little dessert fork, and
Yeah.
it actually does, for me at least. I just thought I'd mention
Yeah.
it's helpful to like, it's smaller bites, and
Yeah.
and the food lasts longer, and I feel like it does give a chance, that 20-minute rule,
Yeah.
so your body has more time to like say, hey, I'm full, if
Yeah.
you're eating slower.
I think it's a good hack. I think everybody has to find the right way for them. Like for me, just watching and being mindful to the quantity of what I'm eating and like approximating like how energy dense is this and how much food should I eat, and paying careful attention to like if I eat literally two cups of food, like I'm full. Like I'm almost always full with 2 cups of food. And and not full as in like I'm satiated, I should say. I'm not like feeling heavy full. I'm just like I don't need to eat more food, 20 minutes from the time that I felt hungry. And so I just eat that amount and then I stop and I put a timer on for usually 30 minutes and I drink some water. And if I'm still hungry after 30 minutes, I let myself eat more. But, that's my way of doing it. I think your way of doing it is great too. And everybody can kind of experiment with what works best for them and their body.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
actually
It
there was
always,
actually a study about the plate size. So they actually
yeah.
put the smaller food in a smaller plate, and people still felt full because it was a psychological that
Yep.
they had. Yeah.
That's
I
another
find
one I read about.
I
Go ahead.
tend to go back and fill my plate up over and over. I actually prefer the bigger plate with the normal and the smaller utensil. But the other thing I was going to say, someone I used to know used to when like going out to eat. So as soon as the food would arrive, they'd also order a to-go box, and they just right before even starting to eat, they put half their food in the to-go box. So that, yeah, it sounds like everyone's nodding, so they already know this. But like, I
I
thought that was,
didn't know that. I like the approach. I generally have a to-go box almost anytime I go out to eat.
yeah. So just
Yeah. Well,
doing,
think about it. Like the restaurant food is double or triple the normal size. But
Yeah.
the problem is when you're eating and it's there, it's so tempting and so delicious. So the hack is really to do it right away. Like before you, as soon as the
Yeah.
plate comes with the bag, with the box, you cut it in half, and all you see is the half, and then you
Yeah.
feel
And
it's good.
the thing that I was doing with this other FTI member of taking pictures before and after helps too because you know that that after picture is going to be seen by someone who is like a peer of yours, and so you don't want to have too much food missing on that after picture, and so you do the before and the after picture, and then you pack it up. Well, you're going to be more conscious of what you eat if you have to share how much you ate with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good hack. Neil?
Yeah, so just a couple observations. So you mentioned how vegetarian and vegan are good things, and I would agree with that in the sense that I've known many vegan and vegetarian people, and none of them are ever overweight. So I definitely see there's a correlation between um, that diet and not being overweight. But one thing I've heard recently is there's a lot of people that started eating meat-only diets of I forget what it's called, but you just eat meats, and they've had good success with that. And that's a little counterintuitive because that seems like the opposite of the vegetarian diet. So I just it's just an observation of mine that here eating an opposite diet of what we know is good and healthy seems to be for certain people also healthy. So just an observation. Another observation of mine is when I've gone traveling, like when I went to Taipei, Taiwan, and looked around, I didn't see anybody overweight. So I definitely think there's some cultural differences that affect obesity.
I agree with you on the second point. I would say though the general consensus is that meat-only diets are not healthy. While there are some pros to doing it in the short term, you basically end up lacking key nutrients. And so, vitamin C, fiber, magnesium, K1, antioxidants are nearly absent in meat-only diets. So there are a lot of unhealthy things about a meat-only diet. So I wouldn't recommend that. And zero fiber is also bad for the gut microbiome that we were talking about earlier, and it can lead to higher colon cancer risk long term. So there are a number of things that I would not recommend meat only diets. Although I do also know people who have done them and swore by them. So I'm not saying definitively no one should ever do that. There are, for my father, there are blood types that are better at eating more meat, but I would say not meat only, not 100% meat, but a primarily meat diet might be good for certain genetic backgrounds. And this is part of what I think, what Mandy was talking about, looking at genetic diets and like what is healthiest for our genes is like a future area of exploration. Thanks, Neil. Jenny, go ahead.
I'm just curious, did anybody else read this article that in our mouth there are good bacteria on our tongue especially, and so there's a theory that even brushing your teeth sort of with using toothpaste sort of kills some of these good bacteria in your mouth. Has anybody else read Oh, Carl,
Yeah,
you have
That is
yeah,
true. There's good and bad gut bacteria in your mouth,
just
and
like in your tummy, just like
yeah,
in your stomach. Yeah,
yeah,
and
good.
like
in your skin everywhere. Yeah.
everywhere there's good and bad bacteria. And one of the things that I started doing thanks to Michael, who wasn't able to make it tonight but is usually here. He's a periodontist, and he put me on a thing of doing uh like we have this as part of our FTI curriculum now, is good dental hygiene is like brushing your teeth with antiseptic. And when you brush your teeth with antiseptic, you get rid of all the plaque buildup, and your teeth stay squeaky, squeaky clean. And there's more to it than that. You have to join to be a member of the FTI, and you'll get his full dental regimen. That does kill your good bacteria in your mouth, though. So you don't want to do that more than once per day. So actually, if you're doing that, you only use the antiseptic once per day. If you're going to brush more than once per day, that's fine, but don't brush with antiseptic more than once per day. Once per day is enough to clear out all of the buildup from the last 24 or 36 hours. But it also, there was a study when I looked it up that it makes you more susceptible to sepsis if you're in a emergency situation. So, these things, like, while there's good aspects of lots of stuff, there's also bad aspects of everything. Are we ever going to get the perfect, like, make everything exactly right? And there's always a definitive answer. No, there's always nuance to these things. And that's why, I say, like, yes, like where the science has really good answers, like very solid answers, I recommend trusting the science. But where the science is unclear, trust your gut and trust, what feels right for you. And that's where I should probably be trusting more vegan diet, because it feels so right for me. When I eat vegan, I just feel so much healthier.
Yeah,
And
me
and
too.
so and that's why I cook. I stopped buying meat. I haven't bought meat from a grocery store in like years. I do
That's
buy
another
fish.
thing. I didn't eat any sugar when I was in Korea as a child. That's another thing. I ate no meat because the only meat I had maybe once a year is around New Year's when we killed our chicken for meat, as
Mm,
opposed to the rest of the year we only had our chicken for eggs.
right.
And there was no such a thing as cows, to have meat from. So that's another thing. So when I came to America, like I didn't like the taste of meat, steak, oh, yuck. But then gradually I developed taste for meat. So, I mean, like now, like Korean restaurants have this bulgogi, marinated
Yeah.
meat, and
Favorite
and that
movie.
I could handle, that I enjoyed.
I have to say I
But
love
a
Galbi.
piece of,
So
what's that?
I love Galbi. We just made Galbi for a party we had a
Bulgogi.
couple
Yeah,
weeks
yeah, yeah.
ago, and it was really
So
good.
I do eat meat now, but I try to
Yeah.
eat only a couple of bites of meat per meal.
I
So
actually, Ginny, I did hear from a dentist who specializes in the oral microbiome, and he basically said do not there's certain products in toothpastes, commercial toothpaste that are not really good for your oral microbiome, and he really made a good case about how if you have an unbalanced microbiome, it actually could lead to actually some heart issues, diabetes, all this stuff. There was a connection, which was interesting. But he said one thing that he said is do not use mouthwash, all those over-the-counter
exactly,
mouth.
that's another thing I was going to say. Don't
Yeah,
use
that kill
mouthwash.
kill everything in there. But he
Right,
recommended
right.
something called oil pulling, which I don't know if you've heard of oil pulling, which is basically just swishing your mouth with extra virgin coconut oil because it's got antibacterial, antifungal properties, and it doesn't kill the good microbiome. So it's something to do in the morning or even after meals and stuff to kind of get a little, teaspoon or tablespoon of coconut oil and just kind of like running around your mouth and kind of like, squish it around and then for about 10 minutes or so and then spit it out and then mouthwash your mouth with water. But it's apparently it's natural and it works wonders. So it's called oil pulling if you want to look it
I'm
up.
wondering also using baking soda to brush your teeth. I wonder how that would, because I'm a huge baking soda believer,
Yeah, I think my
to
dad used baking soda actually.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
a lot of toothpaste and stuff and hydrogen peroxide as well.
Yeah, but why not just go to the source? I buy 5 pounds of 10 pounds or 5 pounds of baking soda at a time. I use it
Really?
for like getting rid of ants. I have baking soda all over my apartment, everywhere,
Yeah. As
all
well put
along.
it in your mouth,
Put it in your mouth.
Just don't
Okay.
swallow it.
Yeah, the magic of baking soda. All right.
Yeah. But I always err in the you know in nature, right? So I figure if I have to choose between something that's artificial or natural, I'll go for the natural, right? Makes more sense to me, you know. So yeah.
And I also want to just add that now that I'm in Florida, I do eat tr mangoes and avocados right off the tree.
Mm,
I'm very friendly with my neighbors as I do my daily walk to
Nice.
make
nice.
sure that I'm friendly with them so they'll give me their avocados and mangoes when they
I've
ripen.
never had a fresh avocado, but I love avocados so much that I know I would love them, and I love fresh mangoes. They're so good.
Yeah.
Me
And
too.
they're just starting. They're just starting. And so mango, feast is coming up very soon. Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
Anna?
On down to Florida, everyone. Yeah.
too hot.
Uh, Thanks. I just wanted to mention one other thing that I looked into a lot in the past, and I actually followed it. I don't anymore, but the acidic foods versus alkaline foods,
Mm,
and how important it is to, especially first thing in the morning, because, it seems like oftentimes, people will have coffee first thing in the morning, which is super acidic, and I don't know, breakfast cereal and with milk, which is again both acidic. So what I've read is that particularly first thing in the morning, it's a good idea to eat something alkaline to create a base, an alkalized base in your stomach prior to pouring in all the acidic foods. So what I used to do is have like 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in water, in a big cup of water, first thing in the morning through a straw so it doesn't hurt the teeth. Because apple cider vinegar is, once it goes into the body, it's alkalizing. And that's supposed to be a really great base before eating acidic foods. And it's actually something which I didn't do, but it's something that I guess could be good to do before every meal.
mhm.
So just to
Yeah.
create alkalized base.
There's actually research that shows that if you do what you just did, Anna, and start with vinegar, it actually blunts the blood sugar response of the food you're eating. So you can actually, if you eat like bread, for example, and you have a big spike of glucose in your blood, if you take the apple
Apple
cider
cider.
vinegar and then eat the bread, you'll have a much lower response.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hack. Yeah.
I found that it really did. I mean, I have stopped. I should start again, but I found it really was helpful to my stomach, actually.
Yeah, it's really
I
good.
Sorry for you, Anna, but I did fact check
I'm
it with ChatGPT and it didn't necessarily agree with that. It said that the pH of the body doesn't get regulated significantly by food because it's got to be very, very stable or you would have a medical emergency. It just shifts the pH in urine, not blood. So yeah, I don't know if
I'm
that makes sense.
it, I'm confused. I thought apple cider vinegar was acidic and not a base.
It's acidic on the, like in the mouth, it's acidic, but once it goes into the body, it's supposed to be alkalizing. Um,
Yeah, well, I think that there's a theory that when you consume more acid, that your body naturally balances it out by doing more alkali or whatever. But that I thought that theory was already proven
Yeah, that's what
false.
yeah, that's what Garrett said. The body
Oh,
is really good at the balancing the
yeah.
alcohol and
But
stuff. So it's kind of been debunked.
But I will say that it does say that actually it can support overall health to eat alkaline foods in the morning. It just doesn't do it by making your body more alkaline, but it does still say that it's actually healthy. So
Yeah, and there are people saying that if you consume more base alkaline f foods and waters, that it might protect against cancer. So that would actually say that eating. I'm just like, well, if that's true, then is eating more acidic stuff causing cancer? So that's why I'm scared to have apple cider vinegar.
the reason
No,
that
it's good for you.
the reason that alkaline promoting foods are healthy is because they're often high in macronutrients, fiber, and anti-inflammatory compounds.
But that would be the opposite of apple cider vinegar, right?
Well, that's why I'm saying not necessarily all alkaline you know uh materials are good. It's certain ones, like spinach, avocado, lemon water. Those are the types of alkaline materials that are better.
But Darlene, don't be afraid of apple cider vinegar. There's a lot of research that shows all the benefits to your body, not just blood sugar, but others as well. So don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, just drink it through a straw so it doesn't hit
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I mean, lemon is acidic, and that's
Yeah,
natural. And
exactly right. Actually, what I used to do is I'd have apple cider vinegar with some lemon in a big cup of water and add some black pepper too, because black pepper is supposed to be helpful in
yeah.
terms of absorption.
Turmeric absorption. Yeah.
Turmeric, right? Turmeric and black pepper too. Yeah, yeah.
Bonnie, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Does anybody know or can recommend any reputable sites on supplements so that we can get more information kind of in a condensed version?
I did not ask for the sites.
But you have a list though, you said, Garrett, right?
I have the type of supplements that my dad recommended after doing all his research, but he didn't give me the sort of the research, the sources. I didn't ask him to cite his sources. So
Hey, I mean, I've had kind of that same concern, Bonnie, and what I've come across is that there is so much because it's unregulated. There's
Yeah,
so much
opinion.
that it's a billion-dollar waste of money if it's because you don't know. A lot of times the product it says it's supposed to be in there is not there or not enough or too
Yeah,
much or yeah. So I would always go with with natural foods. As much plant-based natural foods are not, the least processed you can go, the better.
right.
But yeah, but supplements has been, I mean, they've done actual studies of testing, like you would go, including all really good brands that people trust, right? And they would actually test, they would take 20 of a supplement and test what's in it and or the quality of it, that kind of thing. But as far as I know, I think there's nonprofits that actually focus on that. So maybe I would Google that that are supposed to be like the watchdog of supplements, maybe that put a seal of approval if something is reputable or not, maybe.
There's so
Um,
much contradiction in so many opinions. And
yeah.
I've heard so much from naturopaths and even one of my doctors. So it's
Mhm.
like who to believe?
Yeah, I
so
know.
there's one called Livestrong that seems to be coming up in ChatGPT.
I've seen that.
Um, livestrong.com. I
Yeah,
don't know who they are. It just came up when I searched for exactly what we're talking about.
yeah. There's a lot of controversy about some of the well-known um, nutritional celebrity doctors online and TV as
Yeah.
well. That it's a lot of garbage. So it's like,
Oh,
mm,
yeah, Bonnie, actually, I do remember. I did save a couple of links on this. There's one called usp.org, which is the supplements police. Um, and so you might get some information there. And and then there's a company, nsf.org, which is a also kind of a watchdog for like certifies supplements or something. So try those. That might help. That might help you. nsf.org. I'll
Love you
put it
too, honey.
in the and usp.org.
hey, thank you.
Yep.
I'll put a thing in the chat.
Yeah, I mean the problem is the unregulation, and that's the problem. I mean, any company can put a label and say, "Hey, this is what we're selling in it, and this is all the benefits and for it," and
Yeah, this
you
is
would.
Yeah,
an example where, there should be regulation because, um, you know, like they don't actually, this is another story from my dad, but he like knew someone that was taking supplements, and what happens is sometimes they'll test the supplements like across like at parts of the process, but not the end result of the supplement. They don't test it after the whole processing is done of the supplement. And actually, like there was something that someone basically would have died if they had kept taking the quantity of supplements that they had, because the after all the processing, it had like, something like 100 times the vitamin D that it was supposed to, or something like that. And so it was going to just like crush their liver. And so, my dad warned the person not to take that one. So, um, this is where like, you know, the supplement companies, again, this is from my dad, not my own research, but is that a lot of the supplement companies get bought by um, private equity companies that want to make money, and so they outsource stuff to countries where the quality isn't the same as it was originally, and they may have been originally good brands, but over time the brands slip in the favor of profitability. And this is part of where we were talking earlier about the profit motive, and the difference between what I call greedy capitalism versus generous capitalism, which some of you were at my presentation where I advocated for generous capitalism. Um, so
Yeah, somebody mentioned Dr. Greger. I was also going to mention him too. He's very, very science-based in the sense of he advocates for vegan diet, but every video or blog that he does, it's all you see the study and the highlights and everything. And the thing that I really love about him is that he really always goes to the conflict of interest part. In a sense, like, if there's something about kiwis or whatever, and then at the end you realize, oh, it's been paid for by the Kiwi Association and stuff. So there's stuff, that kind of thing where you have to kind of like really think twice about where the study came from and who funded it, because that's the problem with nutrition science, is that they're really difficult and expensive to do. Right. And the gold standard of scientific studies is random-based, double-blind control studies. And unfortunately, a lot of the nutrition science is basically people checking what they ate, that kind of thing, which is not the most reliable. And maybe that's why you have a lot of conflict. And not to mention, again, conflict of interest, right? If somebody gets paid, doctors get paid to recommend certain medicines, right? So that's really the problem. Money in politics and money in nutrition.
yeah, the
Yeah,
problem.
well,
Go ahead.
there's been a lot of talk about Dr. Mercola, who was
Cola, yeah.
Mercola, yeah, he was supposed to be one of the big experts at one point, but there's lots of bad information about him now.
Yeah.
Another guy too, I can't remember his name right now. Was pretty prominent, but there's I think several lawsuits against these people. So it becomes very confusing, and I've seen
It is.
several documents on how sick people have gotten from taking supplements.
Yeah.
You know, being advised by their therapist or doctor or whoever it was, and they ended up with lifelong chronic, um, conditions because of this. So
Yeah.
to
It's
be
really
really,
sad.
really careful.
Yeah.
So, when you say the problem is money, I don't think it's money itself. The problem is that, and I think you'll agree with this, Carl. I think the problem is that the incentives are not aligned, right?
Yeah.
People are incentivized to make the most amount of money that they can. They're not incentivized to do what's fair for everybody. If the rules were such that if a company was doing something negligent, that they would get sued and lose way more money than they were going to make by taking the risk, companies would never take that risk. They would do the right thing and they would test their vitamins more carefully before, after, and during processing, and make sure that everything is safe and could be absorbed. Now, if a company could be sued if the vitamins couldn't be absorbed by the body, then other people would be able to test whether or not they are. And if it turns out that they can't be absorbed, and then the company could be sued for false advertising, that would make the profit motive aligned with doing what's fair. The problem
Yeah.
is our government is the one that would have to put in place laws that are more fair, and our government is the very organization that says that giving money to buy favoritism with politicians is a-okay. So clearly fairness is not in their best interest, and it was one political party that was more behind that than the other. I won't name which, but everyone can do their own research about
Yeah.
which one is behind the citizens, supportive of the Citizens United. We had another this Supreme Court decision, and we had another event on that another day. Um,
Yeah.
Anyone have other items that they want to talk about? Right.
Just to follow up, Garrett, I mean, to me, it always made common sense that there's certain areas of life that should not be political or money related. Like I was thinking, like for example, police, fire, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, pay property taxes, there's no private, right, on that. There's no for profit. And to me, the third one is health. And health would include health care, but also food, because food is medicine. And we
Yeah.
know that. And so if anything related to food, anything that goes in your system was regulated or on the a part where there was no money, like all the research would be done by something like the National Institute of Health or something like that, where there wouldn't be any conflict of interest, no money incentives. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like privatize and for profit, and when you have for profit, that's when you have a problem.
Well,
And
I think the
people,
problem is when the I don't think the problem is companies having a profit. I have no problem with companies having a profit. What
no,
I have
yeah,
a problem with is when they lie, cheat, and steal to make more
yeah,
profit. And if they were held accountable to being honest and fair, I think it would be
yeah,
fine. I don't think
yeah, yeah.
anyone wants to say that companies shouldn't make a profit, right? If companies didn't make a
Right, right,
profit,
right.
they
Yeah, yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
exist at all. And
I
companies,
didn't, I didn't imply
yeah,
to going capitalism sucks.
yeah.
I'm totally
No,
with
there are a
you
lot of
on
people
that
in
aspect
that
of
camp,
it.
Carl. So that's why I'm addressing it, not so much because I think you believed it, but because I think there are a lot of people that, because of greedy capitalism being the norm, say capitalism is horrible because of all the abuse that it's, unleashing on people. The problem is that that's not capitalism, that's greedy capitalism. It's the flavor of capitalism we're experiencing today. It's not the way that capitalism will be, in my opinion, in the future when more companies just decide to be more generous and
But
compete with and beat the greedier competitors. Because
but
I've
we
had
do
hundreds
need that. I
with
think we
that.
do need. I think we do need it that because they're greedy. That's the only way that I get to sharpen my critical thinking skills. Right?
Well,
Mm.
But who's
no,
benefiting here? Who,
theoretically, if there was a company that was less greedy and there was a company that was going to be more generous with you, Mandy, and give you more product for less price at a higher quality, would you rather do business with the generous company or the greedy one?
yeah, the generous.
Yeah, and I've asked hundreds of people that question, and no one has said the greedy one yet. So theoretically, what we need is more entrepreneurs starting generous capitalist businesses and simply being more generous with everybody.
We
And the
had,
generous capitalist businesses are going to crush the greedy capitalist businesses. And then we'll see a new version of capitalism taking hold. And now the world will be a better place for that.
but we. I think we did have that first before the greedy capitalists came on board, and then the
We were
greedy
closer.
capitalists wiped them out.
Yeah, we were closer, but I don't think the greedy capitalists wiped them out. What ended up happening is there was a there was a profit motive, like there was a legal battle which basically said that a corporation's first priority needs to be to enrich the shareholders as much as possible, and anyone who doesn't comply with that can go to jail. And that scared a lot of people into saying, all right, we're going to have to do what's in the shareholders' best interest, even if it's not the right thing to do. Now, there's a solution to that, which is called public benefit corporations, which do not have
Yes.
that obligation. And that's really what a generous capitalist business should be, as a public benefit corporation, not an LLC or a C corp, or I'm sorry, not an LLC or a corporation.
But
Regular
the capitalist idea, when it came about,
corporation.
did have a moral compass, right?
Well, so I
That,
think when capitalism came about, it was a big evolution from the feudalism that was there before,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So capitalism was a big boon early on. It was an improvement, and I don't think capitalism is the problem. The problem is
yeah.
the flavor of capitalism we're experiencing now.
Yes,
And if we went to generous capitalism, I think we would have a, if not ideal, like a pretty close to ideal economic system that is very resilient, changes quickly, but benefits everybody instead of only benefiting the shareholders.
And right now, currently with food and stuff, there's no real way to get away from it. Because I think about Nestle and I think about things trying to avoid certain things. And the only thing I can do to retaliate is to go to a plant-based whole food diet and try to make and cook everything from scratch. Ain't nobody got time for that these days. So
It
like,
doesn't take that much time, Mandy. It doesn't. It doesn't take that much time.
it
Like,
doesn't take that much time if yes, if we didn't all have to work to make the money to get the food and the shelter.
well,
Like
you
if we still
actually
had the
save a lot of money with that kind of diet compared to, eating processed foods, which are generally more expensive.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you actually save money, you end up improving your health. Plant-based whole food diet is the right way to go.
yeah.
Um, so
I
I
think
would, I would look for, what I do, Mandy, is I look for recipes that I can make in under 30 minutes. And I
yeah,
pretty much almost never cook anything that takes more than 30 minutes unless it's a holiday, someone's birthday, something like that, that I'm going to
yeah.
spend 3 hours or 4 hours in the kitchen, making a full meal. But generally, I cook stuff that takes less than half an hour, but it can still be very healthy stuff.
Yeah, I think that because there's 15 minutes left, and for me, like I always need a takeaway. And I think the takeaway is the first thing I'm going to do is do a food diary, maybe for a week or two to see where I'm at right now. And then maybe after that, start incorporating little tweaks here and there with the cooking and moving more to plant-based whole food.
Oh, you know what I forgot to do is share the FTI um the learn more about the FTI doc. Uh and the reason I thought of it, Mandy, is because what your takeaway should also be is to join the FTI as a member and get an accountability partner in the FTI members to hold yourself accountable to those goals.
I'll put that on the list.
Of
Thank you.
course. Anyone have other items that they wanted to comments or questions that they wanted to ask?
Is there such a thing as a definition of a universal man?
A universal man?
Man, yeah, man.
What do you mean by that?
That's the term that came into my mind, and I think of you, Garrett. I mean, you're the perfect man. You cook. You have you sounds like you're very involved in raising your daughters. You're the perfect man.
No, I have
So
lots of flaws, Jenny, lots of flaws.
oh, is that right? Well,
Yes.
I guess I need to talk to your wife, but I think your
Yeah, you
wife is
ask my
pretty
wife, she'll tell you
fortunate.
all my flaws. So she'll even tell you flaws I don't have that are my flaws still. And of course, I have to agree she's right with that because she's my wife. Um, so, um, what's the name? Uh, there's two things that come to mind is autodidact, like being self-taught at things, which I have a lot of like my hobby of philosophy is autodidactic. And then what's the name of someone that's good at a lot of things?
We used to call it a know-it-all.
Is the arete, is that the right term? Or
Arete is a
Greek term for what?
a Greek term for like it meant different things at different points in history. When I was studying Greco-Roman history, it was a combination of like honor, glory, valor, bravery, all these kinds of like it was really more of a macho term, so it's not probably the right thing. Techne was more like technical talent, which was used for the people on the boats, and
Are you
then
talking about
arete was used for the land soldiers. Um,
polymath?
Polymath, that's what I was trying to remember. Yeah, polymath is, thank you, Ariel. Um, Polymath is what I was trying to remember. So I try to be a polymath. So you guys can be a judge of whether or not I am or not.
All right, keep that in mind. All right.
Yeah, it just means you're good at multiple things. And actually people like what's interesting is Nobel Prize winners are actually experts at more than one thing. They're cross-disciplinary. So like I think it was Einstein that was like a violinist as well, like a very good violinist as well as a physicist. Um and so most Nobel Prize winners are good at like multidisciplinarian. All right, anyone have last comments or questions? Maybe we'll end 10 minutes early tonight. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate everyone's time and for your contributions. Thanks everyone for comments and questions and suggestions. And hope to see you guys next week. I think we haven't, have we posted next week's? Let me look real quick. No, it's not posted, but I'm going to talk about USAID, the USAID freeze, and whether or not it's pro-life or pro-death.
Oh, gee.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you as always, Garrett. What a wonderful meeting. Thank you for the great topic
Yep.
tonight.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Jenny. Good to see you, Neil, Lynn, all the regulars, Darlene. Good to see you, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Hope everyone has a great night, and good to see you, Mandy. Take care, everyone.
Good night.